Welcome to Disrupting Japan, straight talk from Japan's most successful entrepreneurs. I'm Tim Romero, and thanks for listening. So, how do you know if your startup idea is any good? After all, coming up with ideas is easy. Knowing how to evaluate them before spending a lot of time and money, well, that's a real skill. And we're going to get to that. Today we sit down with Yo Shibata, serial entrepreneur, investor, and well-known figure in Japan's startup ecosystem. We talk about where Japanese startups are heading and the big bet Yo is making on his next startup. A big bet based on the idea that the current B2B SaaS boom in Japan has got it all wrong. Now, Yo's theory flies in the face of all common knowledge about the Japanese market. But as longtime fans of Disrupting Japan know, I am a hopeless contrarian. Anyone who can make a compelling case about why conventional wisdom is wrong always has my full attention. I just love those stories and ideas, and I love bringing them to you. So Yo and I dive deep into why Japan's current SaaS trend might be about to reverse itself, and what might take its place. We talk about what it's like to be acquired by Rakuten, how corporate Japan is getting better at M&A, and of course, how to know if you actually have a good startup idea. But you know, Yo tells that story much better than I can. So let's get right to the interview. So we're sitting here with Yo Shibata, serial entrepreneur and investor. So thanks for sitting down with us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. Pretty excited.
I'm excited to have you here. And I mean, Yo, you've done so much here. You've started a number of companies. You've started your own fund. You even have your own podcast. It's a great opportunity to really dig in.
Yeah, pretty much.
Just for background, let's talk about your startups. There's been a lot of them.
Right.
Your first one you started in college, right?
Yes, that was when I was 19 or 20 years old. I started a small company with my friend. It was SEO consulting firm. That was back in 2005 or something like that.
Was that something you planned on like scaling into a big company, or was that just beer money for you and your friend?
Back in 2005 in Japan, there was no venture capital, especially like seed stage. Very rarely saw angel investors. They usually took majority stakes with like $50,000 or something like that.
Yeah, and back then, angel investors, they were all like doctors or lawyers. They weren't startup people at all.
Exactly, and startups didn't have any like bargaining power. So if they offer $50,000 with half of the company, the only choice is to accept. So that was the situation back then. We had the ambition to become big, but there were like no knowledge on how to scale a startup. So I don't know if a CEO company is sufficient to go public or not.
Yeah, I could see that. That's the kind of, as you know now, I mean, that's the kind of startup that's really hard to scale. It scales linearly. As you get more clients, you need more experts.
Exactly.
So after you shut that down, you started CodeStart.
Exactly. So after I left the initial startup, I joined McKinsey and spent 3 years as a consultant. And then around 2010, so iPhone launched in Japan. And I saw a lot of startups in the US. The AWS was available. iPhones were taking off. So there were like platform. So it became really easy to start a web service. So I left McKinsey and started a small app that enables users to compare price by scanning barcode. It was a good timing, the great timing. I got almost like 1 million downloads when there were only like 4 million devices sold in Japan. So like more than 20% penetration to users. But there were like no business model. And so I sold that company. Then I started a new startup.
So when you sold it to IMJ, right?
Yes, IMJ.
What did they want to do with that product?
IMJ at that time was basically consulting business, and they wanted their own web service, not B2B, but B2C service. They thought our service is like good start for them to start direct to consumer, like media business.
So they viewed it as a way, as a means of customer acquisition?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
How did that work out for them? Did it work out?
It didn't work out for them. After spending several years, they again sold our service to Opt, I think. There were like a lot of users still, hundreds of thousands users, but there were like no like monetization.
Yeah, it's just it's a clever use. People love it, but it's really tough to put a business model around that.
Exactly. There were like a lot of such mobile apps back then, like no business model. Even like Instagram, it didn't have any business model. So that was like
That's true. It was this great experimental time, right? It was all this new technology. We were suddenly walking around with these supercomputers in our pockets. Cloud computing had made spinning up a business super cheap, and the whole world was trying to figure out what to do with it.
exactly.
It was fun times.
Yeah, it was fun times. For the initial version, I think we only spent $5,000 to develop, and then it got downloaded 1 million times. So that was a crazy time.
Okay. So after that sale, you dove right back in, and you started a Spotlight, which was online points management, right?
Yes, it's a location-based service. You go to retail stores and check in, and then you earn points just by walking into the stores.
Yeah, I've always been kind of amazed at how powerful the point system is, membership points.
In Japan.
Yes! Japanese consumers love these point programs.
Yeah, exactly. The interesting thing is that consumers will react, like giving 2% of the purchased amount and give back like 2% points to the customers. Then just discounting 5%, they don't react, but giving like double points, they're gonna buy. So it's strange.
This has been researched to death, and the consumers even know. They'll tell you, like, yeah, that's not it,
Yeah, exactly. Maybe that's kind of like gamification or some sort of like, very interesting.
So that was rolled into Rakuten's massive Rakuten point system.
Exactly, yeah.
How did that end up? What was the end result?
It went well. Rakuten, at that time, they were trying to launch a new point card to the real retail stores. So they wanted the unique feature to convince retail chain to join their ecosystem. So they used us to penetrate into retail stores. And it was successful. And our company merged with Rakuten Payment. It became also huge for Rakuten. Well, it was a good acquisition, I think.
I want to get back to your Rakuten experience in just a minute.
Okay.
But because the next thing you did after you sold your company to Rakuten, you started the Tokyo Founders Fund.
Yep, the angel investment fund.
And that was really unique and interesting at the time.
Yes, it was.
For our listeners who aren't in Japan, even now, but especially in 2015, most funds, the investment committee were finance guys. It was extremely unusual to have anyone with startup experience making investment decisions.
Exactly. Even now, I think, we rarely see venture capitalists with a true, real entrepreneurial background.
Yeah. I think that is one of the weaknesses of Japanese VC in general. The fact that they tend to be really smart finance guys.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of things they overlook. But how is the Tokyo Founders Fund viewed by other VCs?
Well, we weren't like competing against the Japanese VCs because we wrote small checks to very early stages. And we focused on overseas investment at that time. So And it was like very welcomed. I think Japanese startup community, including VCs, are very supportive of successful entrepreneurs, funding and helping the next generation of entrepreneurs.
Do you think there was a lasting impact? It seemed to me it had such potential to change the way
Right, right.
VCs looked at investment.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope it had some impact. And also, timing wise, around that time, a lot of young entrepreneurs went public or got acquired and had some cash to invest, and like angel investing became like kind of became mainstream in Japan, like angel investing by successful entrepreneurs. And I think Tokyo Founders Fund was very symbolic of the time. So it played a role model, I think. Young entrepreneurs investing into the next.
So here we are 7 years later. Has much changed?
I think so, yeah. A lot of young tech founders or co-founders or like early employees got rich by taking the company public. So there was like a kind of a boom of angel investors.
Yeah, there has been a lot more smart angel investment, experienced angel investment that's come into Japan. People with actual startup experience investing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that really has changed in the last 5-6 years. But what about the VC side? I feel like I'm still not seeing many founders on investment committees.
No, it's pretty rare, I think. I don't know the reason. I don't know why, but it's gradually changing, I think. At least like for the seed round, there are some like super angels or like angels with bigger checks, and they compete against early stage VCs, or they could give us some like peer pressure to VCs. And then if those people are on the cap table of startups, even for the later rounds, they can provide some advice or give some pressure to later stage VCs. The startup community is all like reputation based.
That makes sense. So even if like the VCs themselves aren't changing, the whole funding ecosystem has changed so much.
Yep.
And we get the same result. Well, that's cool. Hey, do you want to talk about your new project, or is it too early?
It's kind of early. Maybe it's the first time that I talk about my new project.
Oh, awesome. Then we got to hear about it.
After I left Spotlight, after the company got acquired by Rakuten, I spent almost like 6 years looking for my next project. The reason I spent that much time is based on my experience. I thought it was pretty important which domain to pick, which industry to pick, which idea to pick, and it determines a lot. People should be more aware about idea picking phase, like market selection and timing.
Actually, founders always get asked, like, how do you come up with ideas? Which I always think is the wrong question.
Right.
It's easy to come up with ideas, right?
Yeah.
The better question is, like, how do you personally filter your ideas?
Good question.
What's the criteria you use to say, okay, no, these 3 ideas aren't worth working on right now?
Mainly 2 aspects. First is the timing of the entry. So every market has a like entry window that allows new small companies to enter the market and become successful, become like rapid.
So you're trying to like identify a growing market that's still early.
Yeah, exactly. Not just growing, but changing market. Something has to change for the market to allow new entrants to challenge and become a dominant player in the market. Something has to change. So that's one thing. And the other thing that I realized recently is founder market fit. Yeah, I tend to ignore that, but in the end, I thought it was pretty important. So founder market fit means is the industry or like business model has a fit with my skills or like my characteristics.
I agree. That is just so, so important. Even from my own experience, all of my startups that have been even moderately successful have been like enterprise SaaS software.
Yeah.
That's what I know. That's what I'm good at. I've experimented with other things that have involved ad sales, and you know, it hasn't worked out for me.
Right.
I think that's super important. You got to realize what you're gifted at, right? And don't fight it.
Exactly. Don't fight it. Because sometimes you're tempted to try new things or like, like B2C, like pure web service is like cool. Like a social network is cool. Kind of video streaming service is cool. But if you don't have fit, ultimately you're going to suffer.
Yeah, every founder needs to bring some kind of core insight
Yeah.
to what they do. You know, it's not just passion. It's there's something you have to see that others aren't seeing.
I agree.
Yeah, hey, I don't want to push. I'm happy to edit out that other part. If you're not ready to talk about the details, we don't have to.
The new project. So the new project is that it's a B2B software company. It's kind of backend as a service platform, and backend for business applications. For example, CRM, HR management, expense management, workflows, those kind of business softwares for that'll be used in large enterprises. Large enterprises, their requirement is like very complex, so they tend not to use off-the-shelf package softwares or SaaS.
Oh, this is interesting. So it's basically creating a SaaS-like platform, but something that's highly customizable.
Exactly, yeah.
That, I don't know. I think that's super interesting in Japan.
Yeah.
Because the B2B SaaS is huge in Japan just because, enterprise IT in Japan is pretty out of date. But yeah, from all the B2B SaaS, the consistent pushback from their customers is lack of customization. And when they lose sales, it's because, they can't customize. So no, I like the positioning of this. I like it.
Thank you very much. Yeah, exactly. So Japanese corporations, especially like large enterprises, I don't know why, but they don't want to change their processes. They just want a system that fits their processes. So it's the other way around. The concept of SaaS is like taking the best practice of the industry and translate that into software. And if you use this software, your process could become the industry best practice. But for whatever reason, a Japanese company doesn't like it.
I don't know. I think there is a core insight there. So if we look at the original SaaS company, right, Salesforce.
Yeah.
Salesforce is not today a one-size-fits-all. It is this incredibly customizable.
Exactly. Yeah. I think Salesforce is the only company that has this core insight. I think they are brilliant. The Salesforce is a brilliant company. As I said, they're copying like superficial like Salesforce concept, but it's not that well thought out.
Yeah, Salesforce pretty rapidly moved from being a one-size-fits-all, no software, plug-and-play SaaS to a enterprise platform.
Exactly, yeah. And they are still trying to become more and more customizable. Yeah. Maybe like Microsoft and other big platform companies gets it, but not like Japanese SaaS company. They are just selling products.
And that gives you a great go-to-market using system integrators as a channel because they need something like this.
Yep.
Oh, we're going to have to get you back on the show like in about a year, and because I want to know how this turns out.
Let's see. Yeah, it's a long game. I think it takes time to build such kind of platform. It takes time to convince not only like enterprises but also this vendor ecosystem like partner companies. It's gonna take a while, and also we have to like find some niche that Salesforce and Microsoft are not interested in. But yeah, we'll figure it out.
Let's back up again. I want to ask you about some of the mergers and acquisitions. For example, when Rakuten bought Spotlight, did you and the team move to Rakuten, or was it more of just a asset sale where you gave them the keys and they drove it away?
It was acquisition, including the team. So we joined Rakuten. I spent 2 years as a Rakuten subsidiary company CEO.
How did that go? Because I know from my own experience of like Digital Garage buying my company,
Yeah.
it was rough. It was, I mean, they were wonderful people and all, but just the difference in cultures was just extreme. And it was hard on my team. So how was your experience?
Yes, my experience wasn't so bad. So Rakuten has already acquired like more than 100 companies, and they have like ton of knowledge about post-merger management. Decision I regret was that for the first year, we didn't move our office in Rakuten's office. So we had like separate office. I thought it was a good idea. Having less impact on employees, like.
Yeah, less jarring.
But that led to not only two types of employees, but three types of employees. So one is like obvious, it's early members, like people who joined when we were just a startup, not a subsidiary of Rakuten. And after full integration, like we all moved to Rakuten Tower, and people who got hired after that is like Rakuten's employee, like they are very clear about the identity. But the problem is like people stuck in the middle. Like we were already acquired, so there's no upside, but they had like different office, different work roles and all that.
Yeah. And I'm sure Rakuten had a much nicer office.
Exactly, yeah. So that was a bad decision. I should have moved more quickly.
But that's a hard call to make. I mean, I've heard it go both ways.
Yeah.
I mean, it certainly makes sense that it's better to integrate the teams, avoid this different class of employee feeling. But I've also talked to founders who, after their company was acquired, really valued that independence.
Yeah.
Really needed that independence to function. So it's a hard thing.
Exactly. But the question is like, how long are you going to be independent? Like.
Yeah, you got to do it eventually, right?
Yeah, exactly.
See, this is one of the things I think. Now, Rakuten's a good example. As you mentioned, they've done, how many M&As do you think they've done?
More than 100.
Okay, they figured out what works for them, right? I think most companies, it's still pretty new, and it's hard. A lot of times, founders, their first day, it's like, okay, you're now reporting to this Bucho.
Yeah, exactly. I think the difficulty is, especially a Japanese executive, even like board of directors, their incentive is not designed to take risks. So they don't want to like fail. But M&A is a high risk deal. It's highly likely that the deal fails. I think that's the main problem.
Yeah, it is. I think that desire to fit the startup into a traditional management chain, that managing to avoid failure at all costs, it's really hard for a startup team to do.
Exactly.
Hey, well, listen, along that theme, can you talk about some of your own failures? Some of the projects you started but didn't work out like you expected?
There are many. So I tested a TikTok-like video sharing platform, like maybe 2019 or something. Didn't work out at all. It's kind of very difficult, very competitive. And the users' expectations to experience is like went so high, so high. I think it's only like geniuses could put off that kind of.
But I also think there's some point of luck to it too, because when you mentioned like the TikTok idea, do you know Hirano Miku?
Yeah,
from Cinema?
Yes, of course.
She had a failed startup that was TikTok idea before TikTok.
Yeah,
and couldn't make it work.
I don't know if it's only like maybe it has to do with the way to do it or like small features. Of course, luck plays a big role.
Yeah, I think so, but I also think that I don't like this whole idea of like celebrating failure because failure sucks and that's fine. It does, it's not
Yeah,
fun.
not fun.
But I think new founders would be better prepared if they understood like even the successful serial entrepreneurs, it's a very small percentage of the projects that are actually become successful.
Yeah, pivot is always a necessity, I think. Also, it's really important to stop and close the project if you think it's not working early on.
Can you tell me a time where you've had to do that? Because that's a hard decision to make.
Yeah. So always this kind of point of no return event. Everything before that, you should stop if you think it's not working. I think responsibility as a founder is to delay as much as possible that point of no return.
So what's an example?
Like outside investment, hiring full-time employee that you can't let go of easily. If it's like very like high skilled CTO or something like that, you can always stop and let him go because he doesn't have any like job security issue. But if you hire like 3 new grads, I think it's.
I get that. It's you're saying when you feel responsibility.
Yeah.
For other people.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you hire a bunch of people who need this salary to eat, that is a responsibility. If you take money from a VC, you have agreed to play the game a certain way.
Exactly. Yeah.
And you've got that responsibility. Yeah, that's a good way of thinking of it. And I think I think in my own shutdown startups, it's always been something like that. Yeah. Because it forces you to look at yourself and like, is this really
exactly?
Do I really think I can pull this off?
Right.
Hey, you spent some time in San Francisco, right?
Yep. And New York.
Yeah, and just to kind of like be there and learn and see how things are done.
Yep.
What's the most important thing you learned from the US and brought back to Japan?
Good questions. There are like so many participants to this startup game in the US. The competition is like maybe 10 times harder. On the other hand, maybe the prize, if you win the game, is more than 10 times, maybe 100 times. So that's worthwhile, but it makes sense. But the sheer number of people who are trying to join the entrepreneurial game, I think it's the core difference. That means more challenges, more extreme ideas because you have to differentiate with others. More kind of winner takes all situation.
Yeah, that's true. That pace is so much faster in the U.S.
Yes,
it is this relentless pace.
Yes, relentlessness. Yeah, is a biggest difference, like fundamental difference.
Is that good?
I think it depends on how you like competition. It's way easy to be successful in Japan because of the number of competitors. But it has own like limitations. It rarely is startup that goes global because Japan market is kind of unique.
Yeah, well that's certainly true. I mean, you can't take US startup culture and just bring it to Japan. It won't work.
Right.
Culturally and institutionally, it's just different.
It is.
Universities play a much bigger role in Japan. Enterprise companies play a much bigger role in Japan.
Yes.
But what do you think we should be doing? What could we do to strengthen the startup ecosystem in Japan? Either something coming from the US or just something that should be done.
More people starting companies. That's one thing.
Just more people getting out there and doing it.
And the other thing is like more people who are willing to accept changes, generally speaking, both consumer and business buyers. Because they are very conservative in terms of decision making. It directly reflects on sales cycle.
Yes, yeah.
Let's say like sales cycle is 3 months in the US. Maybe it takes like 9 months or 12 months in Japan. Just that kind of decision making. it slows down everything.
That is true. I think but that's one of the biggest advantages of having a real startup ecosystem in Japan now. Like during the dot-com boom, there were plenty of startups, but they were all either selling to consumers or to enterprise. But now the ecosystem's big enough, a lot of startups are selling to each other.
Yeah.
And innovation will get adopted quicker, and like the use cases and success cases can happen faster, and then they can take it to the enterprise and say, see, we've got these customers, they're very happy. So I think that's been a really good positive change.
Exactly. Especially we are seeing it in online businesses, mainly like e-commerce. A lot of online businesses started very recently. So a lot of the managers in those businesses have a very progressive mindset. On the other hand, very old industries, it's still the same. So we need more people challenging that kind of industries.
So definitely need more people starting companies, but what kind of startups do we need more of, or what kind of startups do we need less of?
What I'm seeing right now, my background, or I've been to consulting firm. I've worked in McKinsey. So current junior member in McKinsey, they really want to start a new company. They really do. It has changed a lot. But the problem is that they can't find ideas. Of course, idea generation is like tough, but so my solution is that first we have to turn around the old industry, make them accept, for example, like IT tools, not using pencil and paper or fax machines.
So just the basic digital transformation.
Yeah, and to do that, the incentive needs to be created. The best way is maybe to acquire those old small businesses and then consolidate, roll up, and then take it public or like sell to another private equity kind of players.
What kind of businesses, what kind of industries are you?
Oh, everything. So I am seeing very early trend, small M&As below $10 million. So very small companies, like a small manufacturer or like even like cleaning, laundering business, very small, turn it around and then buy another company maybe and merge two of them and then sell it to private equity. It starts this cycle of productivity improvement.
Yeah, well, that certainly has been a successful trend over the last 20, 30 years in the United States.
Yeah. And then like simultaneously, we can have new services to provide solution for those type of companies.
Get economies of scale happening.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it sounds like your overall outlook is pretty positive for the future of Japan here.
Yeah, overall, yeah.
Hey, well, listen, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with me. I really appreciate it.
Likewise. It's my pleasure.
And we're back. There were 2 points Yo raised about innovation that I really loved. First, I loved Yo's framing of founder market fit. Sure, great managers can execute in almost any industry. But great founders, they need an understanding and insight into the industry they want to disrupt. You need to be able to see something that others don't. Second is the importance of the innovation trigger, the innovation platform. So smartphones and cloud computing emerged at about the same time, and that blew open the doors. It created an innovation platform that allowed us, that really forced us to rethink the way we do almost everything. And we saw the same thing when personal computers and the internet formed the innovation platform that fueled the dot-com boom. But getting back to Yo's new project, SaaS as a configurable, fully customizable platform rather than a low-cost, low-maintenance, streamlined system. It's certainly going against a very strong industry trend and all conventional wisdom, but can it work? Well, yeah, maybe. On the risk side, Yo seems to be attaching himself to an inefficient market And that could put the venture at risk of shrinking margins, lower budgets, and higher risk aversion in general. Many enterprise customers are actively trying to reduce their dependence on systems integrators right now. On the other hand, those are very long-term trends. In the short and medium term, there will probably be a lot of demand from system integrators who need something like this to counter the business they're losing to SaaS competition. So there would be plenty of time for Yo and the team to pivot and align to long-term trends once they have a good user base. Or, of course, to simply continue as planned if Yo's theory about the long-term success of SaaS turns out to be the correct one. It's a very interesting move, but one thing is absolutely certain. The first startup to enter the market with a customizable SaaS platform like this has a far better chance of success than the 10th startup who enters the market with a Me Too HR management SaaS platform. And that's not just the hopeless contrarian in me speaking. That's just good common sense marketing and positioning. Innovation is about bringing something new into the world. Innovation is about doing things differently. If you want to talk more about SaaS and the future of startups in Japan, Yo and I would love to hear from you. So come by disruptingjapan.com/show190 and let's talk about it. If you leave a comment, I guarantee Yo or I, or maybe both, will respond. And hey, if you like the show, tell people about it. In this age of omni-channel advertising and reviews as a service, you'd be absolutely amazed how much power your honest recommendation really has. But most of all, thanks for listening. And thank you for letting people interested in Japanese startups know about the show. I'm Tim Romero, and thanks for listening to Disrupting Japan.